It was subpoena day in federal court in Washington, D.C. In fact, in two different federal courtrooms, two different witnesses fighting subpoenas from the House of Representatives. Joining us now, Neil Katyal, former acting U.S. Solicitor General, who has argued dozens of cases before the Supreme Court. He is an MSNBC legal contributor and co-author of an upcoming new book, Impeach, the Case Against Donald Trump. Neil, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Let's start with the Don McGahn subpoena. Let's consider what happened in that case, because the judge really had a struggle trying to understand why Don McGahn should not be forced to comply with a House subpoena.
Yeah, so you had two things going on really today, but two different witnesses. But I think the most important thing, Lawrence, to start your discussion is that's all gravy, you know, from the House impeachment standpoint. The evidence against Trump, as you've been discussing for the first 10 minutes, is overwhelming. It's Trump's own words. So, you know, these witnesses are nice, and McGahn and Kupperman will be helpful to the House's case, but they're not necessary at all. And so what Trump is trying to do here is delay them from testifying as much as he can. And the argument that he made before Judge Jackson today, his lawyers and the Justice Department lawyers, was pretty much, you know, poppycock. I mean, basically, you know, he came in and said the House can't file a lawsuit at all to get this information. Judge Jackson said, asking the Justice Department Trump lawyer, what, you're saying the House can never go to court? Answer by the Justice Department lawyer, yes. That flies in the face of decades of precedent at the court and is just going nowhere. So this is bad lawyering, a bad legal argument, and ultimately, you know, I think it's all Trump's got at this point, but it's not looking too good.
Neil, it's a bad legal argument, but those are the corners. The corners that they're getting painted into in court are corners they've painted for themselves. There was no other answer, right? I mean, given the logic of what they're arguing, there was no other answer at that point other than, no, the House can never go to court.
Well, you know, I think responsible lawyering would have been to try and say, look, you know, some of the things that he might, this guy, the former White House lawyer, Don McGahn, might testify to might be sensitive, involving executive privilege or something like that, to be narrow. But what they've done is just throw down the gauntlet and say, no, nothing, you can't do anything, you can't testify at all, you can't talk about anything, I'm the president, I'm a king. And, you know, that's what we fought the revolution about. And that's why these arguments have been spectacular, unsuccessful. Judge Jackson is a widely respected judge, and I think she, you know, in the course of hours of hearing today, really decimated the government's argument.
Let's go to the other subpoena case, which is procedurally much stranger because it's a lawsuit the likes of which I'm not sure we've ever seen. This is Charles Kupperman. He was John Bolton was his boss in the White House, and he's asking the court through a lawsuit to answer to him, should he comply with a House subpoena, or even, and now that he's a private citizen, should he follow Donald Trump's request, which is all that it is, a request that he not testify to the House, the assumption being that John Bolton will be added to this case because he's represented by the same lawyer if John Bolton gets a subpoena.
Yeah, Lawrence, I think the best way for your viewers to understand this lawsuit is it's not really a lawsuit, it's a delaying tactic. What Kupperman is doing is coming in and trying to buy time so he doesn't have to answer the subpoena and testify in Congress. You know, I don't know what his motivations are, but that's the effect of what he's doing. And he's gotten the support from the Trump administration for that, so much so that the Trump administration, when the judge here, Judge Leon, who's a widely respected judge as well in D.C., Judge Leon set the argument for December, and the lawyer for the Trump administration said, oh no, that's going to interfere with Thanksgiving. Can you please make it even longer? And what Judge Leon said was, quote, when it's a matter of importance to the country, you roll your sleeves up and you get the job done. This is about delay, and it's about trying to run out the clock on impeachment. And the problem with that is twofold. Number one, the evidence against Trump is so overwhelming. And number two, it looks more and more Nixonian. It looks more and more like obstruction of justice, which, after all, was a separate article in the Nixon impeachment.
Neil Katyal, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.